Birmingham come from behind to beat Peterborough at Barnsley, draw in the late kickoff, and Huddersfield lose again. Welcome to this week's League One Lowdown review episode, brought to you from the deck. Hello everyone and welcome to the League One Lowdown, brought to you from the Deck Podcast Network. I am Seb Jones alongside Jamie Johnson as ever. Jamie, how have you been?
I've been okay, not too bad. A bit worried about the weather. It's absolutely throwing it down outside. Apart from that, I can't complain too much.
Good, yeah, it's been chucking it down the past couple of days, made for a miserable couple of days really, but yeah, hopefully brighten some of you guys up with chatting all things League One. It has been a busy weekend, and it will also be a busy midweek because we've got a whole round of games taking place on Tuesday. We're going to start looking at the fixtures that took place at the weekend, and then we're going to look forward to the games coming up on Tuesday. So a bumper-packed episode, and we'll get cracking. We'll start with Birmingham City, who currently lead the pack in the League One table, and they beat Peterborough, but it didn't go to plan. Jamie, that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a weird one. It was one of those. I don't watch it very often. I'm usually at a game, but I wasn't at a game on Saturday, so I was watching the Soccer Saturday on the on Sky, and they went 2-0 down. It was a bit like I can't quite believe that they're losing at home to a Peterborough team who are inconsistent at best, and then that was after about 15-16 minutes. They were 2-0 down, and it was looking, the unbeaten run, the only unbeaten team left in the division, are no longer unbeaten, and then suddenly a really strong comeback after what was admittedly a good start for Peterborough. They started the game well, but they couldn't see it past that 15-16 minutes. I mean, Birmingham, it looked like they sort of dominated in terms of all the stats, and you look at it in that sort of way, possession 70-30, but I know I talked about possession stats probably last week, the week before, about Lincoln having so little possession, but it not really affecting them. But Birmingham, in favour of this one, had the lion's share, you'd say. But probably didn't make the most of it. I mean, it was fairly even on that sort of thing. 12 shots to 5, but only 4 shots on target to 3. So that they're having more shots, getting in probably better areas, but not converting that into a shot on target, which that would, I guess, be the disappointment you take from the game. But ultimately, it shows character, doesn't it? Going 2-0 down 15 minutes in, you want your team to respond to that, because it's very easy. I think that a team could fold, go 3 down, go 4 down, and it's game over, isn't it? If you concede another. But they fought back, got a goal before half time, and then second half got the two that give them the win, keeps them unbeaten, and yeah, I mean they're doing really well.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned there about character. That is the main thing. As you said, they're still unbeaten, 7 games played, 6 wins and 1 draw. But it didn't look hopeful. But the fact they come back from 2-0 down to keep that unbeaten streak going, I think it's a testament, isn't it, really, to Birmingham. I guess we can credit Peterborough, saying, maybe they caught Birmingham, a fast start, sort of when they didn't expect it as such. But we have to credit Birmingham in terms of coming from behind 2-0 down to win the 3-2. That itself it deserves plaudits.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, characters, like it seems to be like the buzzword now, doesn't it, in football? It's all the new signings. It's always about character and personality and that sort of thing. But it does make a difference, and in a game like this, that it comes through when you go 2-0 down, heads are down. It's like, we've lost first loss of the season. The unbeaten runs over. We're getting battered at home, and then suddenly they turn it around. And I think the goal before half time is probably the key one. The fact that they're not going in at the break 2-0 down. I think it was about 25-30 minutes in where they got the first goal back. I think that was probably the important one. The fact that they just got themselves on the ladder, and it's 2-1 at half time, which is a whole world different than 2-0 down at half time. And then the second half put the foot on the gas, as they say, and got themselves the 3 points. It's I mean, they're doing really well this season, aren't they? The top of the league for a reason, unbeaten for a reason. And as much as obviously they've spent the money, and Stansfield hit the headlines, didn't he? 10-15 million pound signing, and they've spent a lot of money this summer, but you've still got to credit them and say they're doing really well with what they've got, and they're putting together a really strong team. And anyone who's going to beat them, you're going to have to go a long way.
No, for sure. And it was actually Christian Bielik who scored the winner. At 66th minute. What
Turned out to be the winner.
Well, it turned out to me, yeah. I want to know. And he is actually a player that they had last season. One of the centre halves that has sort of been the starting pair. What have you made to sort of his start of the season? Bear in mind, all the changes over the summer at Birmingham. For him to captain the side and to sort of just be a strong player, set the example. How do you think his start of the season has gone?
I mean, it's probably difficult for people like him when you've got and people in that squad who went through the relegation. That roller coaster last season when they were doing so well under John Eustace, brought Rooney in and dropped down the table. Eventually got relegated, obviously, in the end. It must be difficult, and then to come in the summer and see all these new names coming in, a total refresh, lots of money being injected, and he and sort of other players in his position will be standing there and thinking, well, what am I going to still be here? And obviously he is. It's his third season he's moved into now. And he's got himself it's his first goal of the season and only his second goal for Birmingham in sort of competitive side of things. He got a goal and an assist in his first season, but nothing last season in the Championship. So he's doing well, though, isn't he? That leadership for that team, in that is what drives the sort of character that we talked about in terms of coming down from 2-0. You've got to have a leader and a group of leaders that push you toward that, as well as it being the manager on the touchline shouting it. You need that support on the field, and he's obviously a big part of that.
And just finally, a word for Peterborough. They've played 8 games, won 3, drawn 2, and lost 3. So a bit of sort of an average form, really. What do you make to them, and can they be too disappointed with the defeat?
I think it's just inconsistency with Peterborough. I don't know how you feel about it, Seb. I'm going to look at it because they lost so many in the summer, and that is the talking point with Peterborough, isn't it? How many they lost this summer. And I know that's the transfer policy. They bring them in from non-league, from lower leagues, from other countries even, and push them up, get them into a better position, move them on for profit. And it works. They're not the only team that does it. It works perfectly for them, and they replace them really well. But I think they probably just did one or two too many in the summer. Like they got rid of too many in that squad all in one go. They probably needed to save one or two for January or for next season, because it's been a bit of a reset, and without Poku, that team's in dire straits, really, isn't it? Not to be too critical. I mean, they're 12th at the minute, like you say, level on points with Stevenage, who I know we all at the start of the season were damning Stevenage to a struggling season. I mean, they're not far. They're only 3 points off the playoffs. It's not like it's a dreadful start, is it? Because we said at the start of the season, if they're getting in and around the playoff situation, that's probably where you'd expect them to be. And we have only 8 games in for most teams. So they're still early days. I'd say the worry would be inconsistency, but Dan Ferguson's experience, has been around the block twice over, and he's done it at Peterborough before. So there's no reason why you can't sort of put that team right and perhaps push them towards the playoff. They just need to get on a run of form, is how I would look at it. They just need to get themselves a few wins strung together. I mean, they had a few games where they went sort of unbeaten for a few games before this one against Birmingham, but they've only got one set of back-to-back wins so far this season, which they need to put right if they're going to push towards the playoffs.
Yeah, work to do, that's for sure. And I imagine they'll be disappointed going 2-0 up in any game to then lose that one as well. We'll move on to the next game, and that was very strange the Saturday night kickoff between Barnsley and Stockport. Firstly,
well, before we talk about the game, I want to ask you, because you were there, obviously, a Barnsley fan.
Yeah.
What was it like the Saturday night? Because obviously you get your midweek games and your Tuesday, your Wednesdays, you can get on board with it. But a Saturday night, what's that like, going to a Saturday night game?
This shows how great minds think alike, because I was just going to ask you the exact same question. It was. Do you know what it was? It didn't feel. It just felt like a midweek game, really. But with probably a better atmosphere than any generic midweek. There was about 14,000 in Ockwell, and that there was 2 and a bit thousand from Stockport. So a good atmosphere, really. And I think that was helped with the fast start. But yeah, it didn't feel that much different. I guess during the day it was weird because you had a few more hours at home or a few more
You're
hours in
waiting all
town.
day, yeah.
Yeah,
It's not like a midweek game where you're coming home from school or uni or work or whatever it is, and it's straight to the game. You've got all day to sit around and think about it.
Yeah, so that was probably more bizarre in itself. The fact that I was like odd stuff on in the morning and afternoon, but other than that, it was a little bit weird. I wasn't rushing to get to the game. So that was a bit weird. That was probably the weirdest bit. But Barnsley have been Saturday night game a few times, but not in that that many recent years. It's more towards when we were in the Championship. But the game itself, as I said, started quite well. We earned a penalty in the 4th minute. Davis Dunn was brought down. One of those where I don't know, people try and argue that it wasn't a penalty, and then as soon as they see the replay, they go, "Yeah, that was a penalty." And even for us, sort of sitting, it was a blatant penalty. So yeah, Adam Phillips dispatched that 4 minutes on the clock, and actually, Barnsley could have made it 2 or 3 in that first 20-25 minutes. They started the game really strongly, trying to punish the Stockport back line, and then they ended the half pretty strong as well. Just couldn't make any chances dividend, really. And they, in the second half, they didn't have the same attacking content, and it looked as though they were just trying to hang on for the lead. And it's always risky to do that at 1-0. And then, what happens is what happens. And Louis Barry pops up with a last-minute goal, and then it's a finished one apiece, really. Poor, really, to sort of hang on. And it was a proper defensive display in that second half, but it did need to be. We could have just attacked as we did in that first half. And I think actually Devon Clark has come out and said, "I didn't tell my team to sit back. I told my team to sit back in the last 5-10 minutes when it was getting to crunch time, when we knew we couldn't do anything else with the ball, sit back." But he said that he sort of instructed his players to push forward. That wasn't the case. So a frustrating one to watch, really. Although a point apiece, I don't think it's a bad result, given that Stockport started the season pretty strongly. Barnsley, are on a good vein of form themselves. So I don't think a point apiece is bad. It's just frustrating given how well we did start the game.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly understandable. I think Stockport probably had, reading the stats, and I think you sort of backed it up a little bit, had the better of the attacking play, but that makes sense if a team sort of sat back, I guess, a little bit in the second half. And that would be a disappointment if you're looking at a Barnsley perspective, in that you've took an early lead, you're on the front foot, and you've not been able to take advantage of that because you've just sat back and just tried absorbing pressure against a Stockport team who, we know can put the ball in the back of the net. That's probably their strong suit. Is their goal scoring and their attacking play. It's definitely been their sort of positive, their main positive, I should say, because they've been impressive sort of all round. But their main positive is up front, and you're playing a team like that, you don't want to sit back and absorb. You want to get on the front foot, score a second, 2-0 could put the game to bed. So I think that would be the disappointment. But it's fine margins, and I think it's been like that with Barnsley just as the season as a whole. They've been close to getting results, and little things falling one way or another, or a bad decision by a player, or maybe a tactical issue or something, and it's the little bits are catching up with them and costing them points, but they're still in a positive position quite early on in a bit of a rebuild with Darrell Clark in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Stockport will be happy with that point. I know they started the season really strongly, and sort of it's faded down a little bit. But I think on the whole, I think they'll actually be quite impressed to go to Oakwell and to actually come up with a point. That's pretty good going on their part.
It's a good point away from home at Oakwell, yeah.
So Stockport 1, Barnsley 1 was the final score. Barnsley, I'm sure we'll come on to this a little bit later on, but Barnsley faced Wycombe at home on Tuesday night. The next thing we want to look at is Reading versus Huddersfield. And again, it's one of those where one side took the lead, but didn't finish the game as winners. So there seems to be a bit of a recurring
theme. The story
theme.
of our review segment in this podcast, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was so Huddersfield took the lead, and I think they probably needed that victory, given they're on a bit of a slumber form at the moment, but wasn't to be in the end, Jamie.
Yeah, Reading scoring either side of half time, and I think they're a team. Just talk about Reading generally before the actual game. They're a team I always sort of put in that category. Maybe you'd stick a Stevenage and Northampton in that category of the teams that on paper you think, yeah, we'll go and beat them, but it's never that easy. Wigan would probably be another one. That they're not easy teams to play, especially when they're at home. And Reading had really good home form last season as a whole. Through all the troubles and the issues and having such a young squad, they did really well. And they've carried that on. I mean, this is a really good result. It looked like David Button, the goalkeeper, obviously former Brighton, seemed to be the star of the show. 7 shots on target from Huddersfield, but after they got that first goal, which was quite early on, they just couldn't get past him, and he got on FootMob, the sort of the star of the match. I don't know how much stock people put into that sort of thing, but he seemed to be a real star performer. And that's good. Lots of late pressure. Reading hold on, and that's the key, isn't it? Once you get in the lead, it's about holding on, and Reading did that really well after soaking up some early pressure. And at the end of the game, it looked like they were under a real sort of bombardment from Huddersfield. But in the end, they got the job done, and it's a really big 3 points that for Reading, pushes them away from sort of relegation at this early stage, and they're doing it against a Huddersfield team who are 8 games, 4 wins and 4 losses. I mean, they don't like a draw, but they're not where they'd want to be when they're a team you should be expecting to push for automatics. But all credit to Reading, a really good result.
Yeah, I think that is the case for Huddersfield. It's 3 defeats on the bounce now. Lee Nichols, the goalkeeper, out for 10 to 12 weeks as well, Michael Duff has revealed in a recent press conference. So it's not particularly looking good for them at the moment. And I'm sure this result has not helped them really. You mentioned there about the shots on target that Huddersfield had. They had 7, but they didn't get any past Button and goal. That has surely got to be the biggest disappointment for sure.
Yeah, it's the creating chances and not putting them away, and that's got to be the issue. Obviously, they got the early goal, and 20 minutes in, I mean, not the earliest, but Pearson scored 20 minutes in, and you get yourself in the lead away from home. You're thinking you just need to keep going with that. A bit like Peterborough earlier, except not quite as bad. Only going from 1 goal in front, but that's got to be the disappointment. And they're just a bit of a strange team at the minute. I mean, last 7 games, all competitions, they've won 1, and that was the 4-0 win against Bolton, and away from home. So that a real flash in the pan result. I know we feel like we talked about it at the time, like it was maybe a sort of a shift of Ian Evatt being on the back foot at Bolton, and it was going to be the thing that pushed Huddersfield on. But since then, they lost 3-1 at home to Northampton, 2-0 at home to Blackpool, who we'll talk about in the second half, and then this result here away at Reading, and that's got to be disappointing just all round after what was a superb start to the season. If you cast your mind back, they won the first 3 games of the season in the league, EFL Cup game mixed in there as well. So 4 games and 4 wins, and then since then they've won just the once, and it was that incredible result at Bolton. So that now looking back feels like a blip on Bolton's part rather than something that was pointing to all Huddersfield going in the right direction. And it's a real worrying sign, I think, that for me, that they've not last 4 league games. They've lost them all, not been able to pick up any points after that good start. And that's got to be a concern.
Yeah, for sure. Currently sitting 10th in the table. As we said there, the last 3 defeats in the row.
Last 3 league games, I beg your pardon.
Last 3 league games, yeah. On the spot. It's I guess Huddersfield will be concerned, but Reading will not complain with those 3 points at all. Takes them.
And you've got to give credit to Reading, actually.
I
mean, obviously the headline is that Huddersfield are struggling, and they're obviously the bigger team and the team we're expecting to be at the top. But Reading deserve a lot of credit. Ruben Sellers has done a good job there, and they're doing well. They've bounced back from that 5-2 defeat at Bolton last week. It was back-to-back defeats before this one, and they've got themselves on the front foot, and they've got Burton next week in midweek, which we'll obviously talk about in the second half. And that is a winnable game, isn't it? On paper, at home to Burton, and 2 back-to-back wins, you're on the front foot immediately, aren't you? And then they face your lot in a couple of weeks. So they're in a decent spot, and yeah, they're a good side, Reading, I think.
Yeah, although that actually game has just been called off because of international call-ups. Although that, don't get me on that, because that's it's a sore point. It's a sore point.
we'll get to that in a couple of weeks when we've nothing to talk about during the international break.
Well, exactly. Yeah,
We'll find something to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's move on before we get raffled. In terms of the other games that took place at the weekend, Bolton Wanderers beat Crawley 2-0. Blackpool beat Burton 3-0. Though, continuing on Steve Bruce's amazing form since he has come in. Bristol Rovers lost 2-1 to Wycombe Wanderers after they clinched a 96th minute Joseph Lowe winner. Lincoln City grabbed an away victory against Cambridge. Orient held Wrexham for a goalless draw. Not too much to say in that one. Mansfield Town were 2-0 victors over Northampton. And the away win goes on for Rotherham United as they drew 1 apiece to Shrewsbury. And finally, Stevenage beat Charlton by a goal to 0. And right at the bottom, Wigan drew 0-0 to Exeter. So those were the games that took place on the weekend just past. We're going to take a break in just a second, and then we're going to be back to discuss the upcoming fixtures in the midweek round of games. Hello, welcome back to the League One Lowdown, brought to you by the Deck Network. I'm Seb, joined as ever by Jamie Johnson. We've spoken about the results that happened last weekend. Now we're going to chat about the upcoming games, preview the games taking place this midweek. And we're going to start with probably the informed team at the moment, and that's Steve Bruce's Blackpool. They made it 4 wins on the bounce at the weekend, and they face Lincoln. Surely there's only one winner there.
Fantastic. So it's one of those. Something's got to give, I think, is the way to describe this one. Steve Bruce, he's the first manager in Blackpool history to win his first 4 league games in charge, which is quite the start. I don't think anyone saw that one coming, did they? Just a couple of weeks ago when he took over the job. As for Lincoln, then they've 13 away games consecutively without defeat, and that's a club record that they've beat the previous club record that they've smashed that, and that away form is quite miraculous, really. And their last defeat on the road. See if you can figure out that quiz question. So, who do you reckon they faced in their last defeat away from home?
You put me on the spot here a little bit. Last defeat on the road.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Someone like Bolton, maybe.
Blackpool. That was the. So on New Year's Day, they lost away at Blackpool, and since then they've not lost away from home. So it could be sort of the coming back to bite them again against Blackpool out at Bloomfield Road. But for me, it's probably the game of the midweek fixtures, not just from sort of a Lincoln perspective in terms of reporting on them and how well they're doing at the minute. I mean, they're up to 3rd. I don't think anyone quite expected that. Blackpool in 4th, played a game more, but level on points with Lincoln. And they're both in a really good spot. I mean, Lincoln's game in hand takes them level on points with Wrexham if they win, which is in the automatics, obviously. I mean, that if you told me that at the start of the season, even though it's such an early stage in the season and the table now doesn't matter, if you'd have told me that at any point in the season they'd be near the automatic playoffs, I'd have told you to give your head a wobble. But they're up there, they're doing really well, and it was a decent result for them at Cambridge at the weekend. And they're the sort of games you need to get results in, because on paper they look easy. A couple of injuries. Ben House went off quite early on. He's out for a few weeks with a broken nose. There was an issue with the goalkeepers. Wickens just about got back. He was a bit touch and go. He got back, which was I think that's a real boost, because the backup keeper, G-Cock, who played in the goalless draw against Wigan, he was out with flu. So he they needed Wickens to be back, and he was just in time. There's a flu going through the camp by the sounds of things. So that is a positive that they've still got a result, because those other things around the game, if you get what I mean, Seb, that they're the other things that could put you off, even if it's a game you think you should be winning. And then now 5 league games unbeaten. So something's got to give. Is it Blackpool's good start under Steve Bruce or Lincoln's superb away form? That's the question for tonight.
Well, yeah, I guess we will find out. But as you said, both teams on the same points with 14 on the board. It's third versus fourth. So yeah, definitely the game of the midweek in this round of fixtures. Having built it all up like this, watch it end up being a 0-0.
Be a 0-0 draw.
But yeah, there's definitely scope for entertainment and the scope for drama. In terms of as you said, sort of the circumstances, particularly at Lincoln, Blackpool will look to continue their fine vein of form. Something's got to give, as you said. One thing for sure, that there's going to be entertainment and there's going to be drama. I think we can all say that.
0-0 incoming. Stick that on the predictions.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you where we could see a 0-0 incoming is at Cambridge versus Rotherham. That would link there, wouldn't it? Two sides that have actually not started the season too well. One of the clubs, certainly Rotherham, I think is quite a surprise in terms of their league position and how they have started the season. Cambridge less so, but nevertheless, the two still struggling sides. Cambridge sit rock bottom with just a point on board. Meanwhile, Rotherham are 19th with 7 on board. They've only won 1 of their 8 games so far this season, with 4 draws in amongst that. So concern for both clubs, and in theory, both clubs need a result.
That's exactly that, isn't it? Both teams need a win, and Rotherham especially, away from home. Their last away win, November 2022 against Sheffield United. I mean, that is... unbelievable for any team, never mind a team like Rotherham, who you expect, obviously, last season they went down quite, to say quite easily, I think would be an understatement. But this season, the fact that they've not picked up an away win yet this season is quite unbelievable. I mean, they drew away to Shrewsbury at the weekend, which you would think, I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when they drew at Charlton, it was that away win's coming. If it's not going to be against Shrewsbury, it's going to be in this game. And it has to be in this game, doesn't it? I mean, Cambridge, rock bottom, absolutely nothing going for them. All they're in a mess, in a real mess. And I mean, Gary Monk can't be too far off from getting pushed out the door. You can't imagine. I'm sure you've got some thoughts to say on that one, Seb. And yeah, we'll go there first before I thought too much about sort of Rotherham's situation. A loss in this one, the end for Gary Monk. That's how I see it. I don't know about you.
No, I would agree. Yeah, I think we covered it a little bit last week, but a week has passed and Cambridge still haven't improved. Really, it's 4 straight losses in a row now. Actually, 5 losses from the last 6 with just 1 draw in that, and that is where the sole point has come from. Definitely cause for concern. Definitely a man with his sort of calibre, with his experience, you would expect Gary Monk to be doing better. I know he's been out of the game for a little while, but he's still a solid manager at this level. That is for sure. But he's just not proven himself at the moment. And there's got to be cause for concern really with Cambridge and Gary Monk at the moment. Whether they can see a result at home to Rotherham as some sort of result that's going to help jumpstart the season, perhaps. I'm not sure whether Rotherham will just walk over them again. That could be, as a classic Rotherham on poor form, go and beat a team 5-0. That will be classic Steve Evans probably. But Cambridge will want a result. And it could be a statement result for them if they do get one. Like I said, only 1 draw so far this season, conceded 15 and scored 6 in the process. So they're on -9 goal difference already. They already have a mountain to climb, and they've only played 7 so far.
Yeah, it's if you could think it. I mean, the only way it could go worse, obviously, they don't have that 1 point on the board, which I mean, credit to them, they've got 1 point, but it can't be going any worse for Cambridge, and that's where they sit, rock bottom, and deservedly so off this start to the season. It, I just don't see a way out of it. Obviously, they've got this game here against Rotherham, and after that, if they don't pick up a win in that one, and on paper that looks like a game they should be losing, but with that away factor to sort of put into the equation, that's a game where that's sort of a game perhaps that'll be one they spring a result. But then they've got Exeter, Birmingham away from home back to back, and then Wigan and Stevenage. And where's the win coming there? I think you can say that you could I could read you any team, and I could read you all 23, and you'd say, "Where's the win coming from?" With Cambridge at the minute, they just don't seem to have of anything. It's you don't like to call for a manager to leave, and I'm not doing that really. But you just look at it and go, how is this going to improve? And I think the only way is just to reset. That's what it needs. I know it's early on in the season, but it just needs a reset, doesn't it? Really, just fresh eyes, a fresh attitude to it. I mean, I know they struggled last season and just about stayed up. Gary Monk didn't exactly paint himself in glory, and he's definitely not doing that so far this season. And they just need a win from absolutely anywhere. And tonight, Rotherham, not easy on paper, but that away that's got to be playing in the minds of Rotherham. That factor with the fact that they haven't won away from home for so long, and every time they don't win away from home, that's going to be regurgitated all week in the media. And I'm sure Steve Evans is probably saying as well that they're not winning away, and that's got to start playing on your mind after a while when you're taking these long journeys down to Cambridge, and you get on the when there's like, oh well, we can't win away, and by the time you get there, that's all you're thinking about, and that's the last thing that needs to happen, and that's the only thing I think that could see a shock being sprung. But that being said, it would be a shock if Cambridge managed anything in this one.
Yeah, you chatted there about Cambridge just needing sort of a refresh or like a clean slate almost. Blackpool needed that, and they brought in Steve Bruce, and the response from that is they've surged up the table. So it's evident in some of the other clubs in the league, and Cambridge will just hope that it could be evident with them. Again, we're not calling out Gary Monk at Cambridge, but something needs to change if they want to survive the season. You mentioned there last season that they survived by the skin of the teeth, really, and the season before that they didn't cover themselves in much glory. This season they won't want this to be the year that they do go down. And
it's just they need a win, don't they? And it's you're trying to figure out where that win's going to come from, and you look at it and you go, I mean, that win's not coming from Gary Monk, is how I see it at the minute. But you never know. It just needs one result, and that it turns the place around. Just the atmosphere, the mood just turns around, and that's all it needs. Just one result, and you never know. But I just can't see it.
No, that's true. And in terms of Rotherham as well, it's incredible, really. We're coming up to 2 years now, just 1 month away since their last away win. That is unheard of. So if there's any man that wants to put that right, I'm sure Steve Evans will definitely want to put that right. Use that as motivation to hopefully encouraging players to come back from Cambridgeshire with 3 points. But we will see. Finally, the game we're going to look at in detail is not the most exciting game, but it's two clubs we've not necessarily spoke about at depth on this episode and for a while, and that is the game between Crawley and Mansfield Town. Both sides sort of on opposite ends of the league table as things stand. Crawley down in 20th, while Mansfield are in 5th. So how do you see this one going, Jamie?
I mean, not to lift the lid up too much, but so we look before the podcast, we pick out our games, the games to look back on, and in this case, the games to look forward to. And I thought, we've not talked about Crawley for a while, and we've not talked about Mansfield for a while. And for different reasons, I think they're worth talking about. Mansfield, obviously, in 5th, doing really quite well at the minute, and Crawley very much aren't. I mean, Mansfield, apart from an EFL trophy defeat, to Bradford since they got battered by Lincoln at the back end of August. That they're unbeaten in the league, a draw against Stockport, and then 3 victories in a row. They're doing really well. Obviously, a team coming up into division. I know at the start of the season we were doubting the fact that they'd be anywhere near where they are now. They've sort of proven the doubters wrong, doing really well, and they've got double the points of their opponents tonight. And they're doing really well. 3 wins in a row. As I said there, 4 games unbeaten. 4 games, that's the word I'm looking for. And then at the other end of things, Crawley, they're 6 games without a victory in all competitions. And as I say, half the points of Mansfield. So it's 2 teams in opposite directions. And that, I think, sometimes creates quite interesting games. Crawley are at home, which obviously helps. And they're another team, a bit like a Mansfield, that need a result after a quite positive start to the season. Obviously, they sort of shocked everyone with the 2 wins at the start of the season. And since then, they've dropped like a sack of spuds. A bit like Huddersfield, in a way, started so well and have dropped stuff since. So they need something from somewhere. Mansfield, though, they'll be looking at it. Yeah, nice away win. You'd expect going into the game after a good away win at Northampton. I saw some of the celebrations from that one when the second goal went in of their 2-0 win, and it was as the limbs in the away end, as they say, don't they, Seb? But yeah, both teams at opposite ends of the table, both teams with opposite fortunes, and that's sort of the picture of it. I don't know how you see it going. Do you see it going in with the form book, Mansfield in-form team against out-of-form Crawley, or could the home team spring a surprise?
No, I do back the away side in this one, Mansfield. Crawley, as you said, 6 games without victory in all competitions. That's 5 without a win in the league. I can only really see this as one-way traffic in favour of Mansfield. I think I'm a real advocate really for Nigel Clough and the work he has done at Mansfield. They've got 3 league wins on the spin at the moment, and they'll be looking to make that 5. And I'm not quite sure anyone thought they'd be in the position that they are, and currently 5th in the table. You had asked me that at the start of the season, I would have not had them on 5th. So they're sort of they're punching it above the weight perhaps slightly, but that's because they're going to side and they're grabbing results. Straight off from that opening day, coming to look well and grabbing 3 points there. I'm not quite sure anyone really expected that, but they've continued that momentum. Only 2 defeats in there, which I don't think is bad going at all. 2 draws and then 4 victories as well in the 8 games played, in 7 games played.
Only 1 league defeat so far.
Yeah. So that's good going for me. 14 points on the board from 7 played. That's good going, really. And I can only really see it being one way. And but Mansfield Lee Gregory is on good form for them. Again, who'd have thought that at the start of the season? But he's been a revelation really for Nigel Clough's men. Mansfield Town, I can see them as winners versus Crawley in this midweek fixture.
He's some player league. He's 5 goals in the 7 games so far. That 36, but he's not lost it, has he? He's got got the experience, the temperament, and importantly the skill to do it still at this level. I think he was a good pick up in the summer, and obviously that's translated into a few goals early on in the season. And on goals, with the other thing I sort of pick out of the stats, Crawley, no clean sheet in 7, and Mansfield have scored 7 in their last 5. So you're looking at that, and it's a team who can't stop the goals coming in their net, and it's a team that like putting the ball in the other team's net and are doing it on a regular basis. I can't find a stat that says Crawley are going to win this one, but football's not played on paper. As we talked about a little bit with the Cambridge Rotherham game, anything can happen in these sort of fixtures. But a team doing well, a team doing poorly, it only looks sort of, you look at it on sort of a spectrum, only going in one sort of direction. And Mansfield are the ones on the up.
Yep, so that's true, and I'm sure they will extend their good start to the season. I'm sure we've got a few more fixtures that we've not covered that we'll just run through very, very quickly in terms of the rest of the midweek action. So Barnsley are at home to Wycombe. Last time they played each other, it was that dodgy Sam Cosgrove goal where there was the alleged foul on the keeper, but the referee played on. So that one's at Oakwell. Well, maybe slight bias in there. Birmingham host Huddersfield. Blackpool
That's
host
before you
Lincoln.
skip past it. That's a big game, isn't it? Birmingham
It is,
Huddersfield.
yeah,
Obviously, Birmingham
yeah.
doing so well, unbeaten. Huddersfield, as we mentioned earlier on, struggling. That's the reason, because that's on paper the big game, the headline game. Obviously, we didn't talk about it because we talked about both teams in the first half. But a Birmingham team doing so well at home against Huddersfield, who are struggling at the minute. That is one of those that only looks like it's going to go one way. But they went 2-0 down against Peterborough, didn't they? Who aren't doing that well themselves. Managed to come back, and I could see a similar story. Perhaps Huddersfield start well or have a good period in the game, but eventually it's Birmingham with that superiority, the depth, the talent they have in that squad. But that is another one of those, quite an interesting game.
Yeah, absolutely echo those thoughts. Blackpool Lincoln, we've already covered. Bristol Rovers are at home to Charlton. Leyton Orient host Exeter. Bolton travel to Northampton Town. Shrewsbury face Stockport. Stevenage are at home to Wrexham. Wigan host Peterborough. And then the 8 o'clock kickoff, all the other games mentioned there, 7:45, except Reading versus Burton, which is an 8 o'clock kickoff on Tuesday. So plenty of action. It's very rare we have a full round of fixtures in midweek action, but it's good to see. It means that League One is well and truly back. We're into now almost the second month of the season. So good to see, and it means more entertaining football to watch, which is very good. I think that just about rounds things up for this episode. Jamie, thank you for your company as ever. Thank you for watching or listening. If you are doing so, make sure to give us a 5-star, give us a like, give us a review as well. Sam will be back alongside Callum for the preview episode to look at the weekend's fixtures, and also just go into a bit more detail into the results that happened for the fixtures that we have
proving
just
all
mentioned.
Our predictions wrong, weren't they, on Thursday, Friday?
Exactly, yeah.
Looking back on everything we've said and going, what idiots. They got them all wrong, all the little predictions we've made.
Yeah, exactly that. Do stay tuned for that one. That'll be across here later on in the week. But from myself and Jamie, we'll be back. Actually, Jamie, you will not be back next week because you're away.
I'm doing your job. You seem to always go on holiday during the first few weeks of the season. It's me who's on holiday this time, so I won't be here next week. But I've got Callum stepping in, so the Lincoln quota remains next week, Seb. So don't worry. The Yorkshire lads will be reunited the following week when all the games get cancelled for the international break. But no podcast for me next week. So enjoy it. Don't get too comfortable without me here. I don't want you to think, we can just do it with Callum instead. I'll be back the week after. But yeah, a nice little holiday for me next week.
Amazing, yeah. He's on a European adventure, which is sounds pretty cool. So I hope you have a nice time, Jamie. But as you said, myself and Callum from our preview episode will be back about this time next week to have a look at the fixtures taking place next week. So for now, we'll see you soon and we'll catch you next week.